Ross Taylor couldn't see at night or when the clouds were in. Eventually, he had to see an eye specialist who would fix his eyesight. In the 2 years before the change, he still averaged more than 50 in international cricket. The top level of batting talent can basically see in the dark. That is who we are talking about in our new book, The Art of Batting. Head over and order your copy today. Name and job title, please.
Hi, I am Sarthak. I am a freelance writer and musician from Bangalore, India.
Obviously, I brought you on because of what happened in Bangalore after winning the championship. But I wanted to start with what was happening before the championship. So the night of, that's kind of where your article starts, is, trying to get a club to watch it in, right? Everything was so packed and tried to charge you a fortune.
Right. And that's also like exactly the reason why I wanted to set up the piece sort of to lay out how Bangalore was primed for this evening. They have made a few finals, but the last one was in 2016, so it's been a while. A lot has changed in that time. Most notably, Virat's stature as a cricketer, and Virat's story is kind of linked to RCB's story. I won't say Bangalore cricket story. And I wanted to kind of touch on how Bangalore was really, really, really up for it. And the reason for that is, and maybe we'll get to that later, is some of the justification given later after everything happened was that we weren't expecting a turnout. And we were like, are you stupid? Did you not see how the city was primed up? So we tried to find the club, and literally everyone was just quoting like ridiculous amounts of money. And to watch an IPL game, 4 hours, 5 hours, even if it's with the best vibe, that kind of money is a bit much. But one thing, the reason we wanted to watch at a club is because we realized, all of us friends and pretty much the entire city, is that Bangalore wanted to make it its moment. And
communal.
Yes, 100%. And one thing that's kind of forgotten in Indian cricket is that Karnataka has a rich cricket history. In 74, it broke Mumbai's 19-year Ranji run. Like Mumbai won it for 17, 18, 19 consecutive years between 55 and 74. And then Karnataka beat them. This was G.R. Vishwanath's team. They beat them again. The next year, they reached the finals, I think, and they lost to Bombay. Then under Dravid and Kumble and all these guys, they won a bunch of Ranji Trophy titles. So Karnataka has a rich cricket culture. Is the RCB team truly a Karnataka team? Maybe not. But what it hadn't had so far was a team that could match up with its aspiration of getting to sit at the royal table. And the reason I say that is because Bangalore is an aspirational city. The people of Bangalore want to be seen. And with every passing year, a sense that you got from the cricket team was that it had all the razzmatazz without the punch, because it became some sort of a knowledge that, okay, RCB are going to stumble. And the approach for the team over the years was to fill in with more stars. Okay, who is the best star we can get, and we'll get him over. So you got a Virat and an AB and Gale and Watson and Dilshan, but who was bowling for you? They're going for runs. Corey Anderson bowled the last over to MS Dhoni. And that's not on. This is with absolutely no disrespect to Corey Anderson, but he wasn't bowling last overs.
I don't think Corey Anderson would be upset by that. I think Corey Anderson was also a bit shocked.
I hope not, Corey. But that match in 2018, they needed to defend 100 runs in 7 overs. And yes, Dhoni was having a good season, but they bowled Pawan Negi and Corey Anderson to Dhoni. And Dhoni was like, dude, if you blindfold me, I'll whack these guys. And the reason all that context kind of is important is to understand that Bangalore was waiting to have a team that was not just filled with a few stars, but also could pack a punch. And what DK and Mo Bobak did was to create a team that could pack a punch. And it was very obvious from midway through the season is that this was a good team and they would make the playoffs. The reason for this long tangent is to understand that we knew as a city that Bangalore would reach the playoffs well before the final, because there was also that 2-week break, which gave us a little more time. We knew Bangalore had made it to the playoffs well in advance. And about 3-4 days before the final, we knew Bangalore had made it to the finals. So yeah, it was important to kind of draw that context in the piece and start with the texture of why were you surprised?
What happens directly after the win? So I know what happens the next morning, and that's obviously Barry reported on. But I was getting videos from friends who were out on the streets saying that Bangalore was partying, and all these things were happening. So quite clearly, the fans were already pretty primed at this point.
Oh yes, the pub we were in is called Watson's. Now, Watson's has these arched windows. They don't have the AC running, and which is great. So from just outside, you could see fireworks going off midway through the 20th over because Hazelwood just was throwing loose cannons because he knew the game was over, and you could see fireworks going off. Everyone knew Bangalore had won by then. And as we exited, the streets were packed, and the streets which were not packed were beginning to be packed. And you heard fireworks, you heard the crowd, you heard music, you had cars. Prem Panikar, the super senior journalist, wonderful journalist, he lives in a very quiet corner of Bangalore, and he spoke in a podcast about cars being honked on for till about, say, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And the police had to be up till 4 a.m., 5 a.m., if I'm not mistaken, because the entire city was on the streets. All the major roads, all the major arteries, all of it was blocked. And by blocked, I mean blocked. And it turned from celebration to a bit of an obnoxious kind of explosion of joy because cars were stopped, cars were mounted on, and maybe these were cars for families trying to get home and they weren't really, allowed to. There were fireworks in residential areas and near hospitals. But point being, Bangalore was not just prime; it was a cathartic moment, and which makes whatever happened on the next day even more avoidable.
So here's the thing. There's been plenty of times when teams have come back to celebrate championships and they've done it, in football and everywhere else, and they do it sort of straight away. But there's some sort of plan in place. But also when it comes to parades and big events, generally there's a 1 or 2 day gap between the team winning and you're having that. And, I'm a Denver Nuggets fan, so I think they won on like the 11th or 12th of June, and I think the parade was the 14th or 15th, because there's that famous video where Nikola Jokic realizes he has to hang around in Denver for 2 or 3 more days than he knew, right? So we know that happens quite a bit. It doesn't always happen, right? And there are different cities that do it differently. But the cities that do it differently, the ones who have it instantly, are usually the ones who are already prepared for something to happen that night. You and I both know that Bangalore was always going to party that night, and that it was always 100%. Going to be absolutely packed that next night. And also that the fans were probably going to want something to happen straight away. They had 3 days. I mean, as you said, they had 2 weeks to work it out all together, but they had 3 days where they could have planned this, understood what was going to happen. So the night of the game, there should have been things in place even when the game was being played and for what was going to happen late at night. Bangalore is a late night city, but it's not as if everyone goes out late in Bangalore. So this was going to be a very different kind of night. Then if they do win, there's going to be a party. And if they don't win, there might be some angry drunks on the street, all those sorts of things. And then there should have been a plan for what happens next. This is where it all seems to go wrong, that outside of actually having police on the street, which is not exactly having a plan, it just means that it's almost a lack of plan with people. There was never any real idea of what was going to happen. And yet I'm not from India. I haven't been to Bangalore in 6 or 7 years. And I could tell you that they were going to be on the streets until daylight broke, right? Like that was a very obvious thing that was going to happen. So what went wrong with the planning here?
I mean, to add to it, and maybe one more texture that I'd like to add here with RCB, just to add to the enormity of what we expected to happen, is a parallel that I kind of draw is with Messi and Maradona's Argentina. India has a very Latin American to football relationship with its cricket. It's very emotional. It's almost bordering on delusion. Messi and Maradona did not win much with Argentina for all the careers combined. Messi has won the last 2 Copa Americas, but before 2021, he had not won anything with Argentina, barring an Olympics gold. Maradona, in his entire career, won 1 final. That was also a comeback against Karl-Heinz Rummenigge's Germany. So you take that out, there are no Copa Americas, nothing. And the reason I mention this is every time Argentina played a World Cup, you would not think of Argentina as, can they compete? Can they reach the quarters? You would think of Argentina as, yo, can they win? Are they title contenders? And that kind of happened with RCB every year. You didn't evaluate RCB thinking, are they strong? You thought, okay, what are the chances? Mumbai are strong. Maybe sometimes HRH are strong. Chennai are always strong. Are Bangalore strong? Strong enough to win the title. And every year that led to a little more agony, a little more of a anxiety, which led to that evening, Bangalore was packed. This is the evening of 3rd June, the night of the final. Bangalore was packed and out on the streets. It was difficult to even find cabs, and then, like we discussed, difficult to find tables in pubs. I spoke to an ex-police commissioner and an ex-cop, and both said that the first thing you do in a metro city is, before it happens, you get somebody from the event management company, somebody from the police force, somebody from the medical infrastructure, somebody from logistics, and somebody from whoever's, if it's a film party, then you get somebody from the film production house. This time it was RCB. And you get them on the table a day or two before, not on the day, because you don't have time on the day. And not only did that not happen, as we will get into, the misery was piled on by more things being put on the list of events on that day.
Yep.
Had it just been a parade and maybe a celebration inside Chinnaswamy, maybe we could have been talking about a different story, but it wasn't. And the first word that went about the parade was, after winning on the night of 3rd June, a word went out to KSCA, Bangalore government, Karnataka government, and Bangalore City Police that, hey, we would like to arrange a parade tomorrow. And that is already too late. Every word that I heard from cops was that you already don't have plans. I mean, in India, there is a population problem in every tier 1 city. Bangalore is a metro city. 14 million people live here. You don't have enough cops per people, per unit people. So what you're going to always run into is too many people per cop. Doing it on the night before, you're already late.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think that's what I was saying about the delay of, there's two ways of doing this. As I said, I have seen teams do parades almost instantaneously, but it's because they had done the preparations beforehand, right?
Yeah.
And so they were like, okay, if we win, our fans are going to go nuts. We're playing in Toronto or, whatever sport it may be, and we've got to fly back in. We're going to fly back in. They're going to go from the airport. So we need to be prepared from the airport to our stadium. There are going to be people. We might as well do the parade. So let's plan it now. And if it doesn't happen, we spend a little bit of money and it's not the end of the world, but at least everything will be done correctly. The issue here is that no one seems to have really thought about what's going to happen on the night of the game, and also then on the day after the game. And then key people involved got very excited that they won and tried to push things through when there was no way. I mean, I'm not in any way a logistical person, and I could tell you that this was going to go horribly wrong beforehand. And I think I was saying on a podcast I did with Robbie that I was in Sri Lanka when in 2012 when they were in the final. And I remember looking at Sri Lanka, looking at Colombo, going, Colombo is not ready for Sri Lanka to win this game. Like, there is no safety stuff around this ground. There was a little bit of like barrier so that it would have been hard. But if 500,000 or 1 million Colombians, what do you call someone who's from Colombo? It should be Colombians, but it can't be Colombians. If people from Colombo all raced in, there was no system that was going to be able to do that. You could pack them away from the players' areas, but the whole ground would have been, and it would have been the same with the rest of the city. And so I've been in that situation before, and I'm used to that situation. And, Nagpur was another one where it was really badly run, and you're like, oh, this is not how you should be doing these things. And I'm not an expert. I don't know any of this stuff. These people are experts. So it's very weird to me that there wasn't there wasn't a group or an action committee that came up with it. And that's the thing that I'm most interested in the fact that there was no plan until it happened. When it was always, at worst, it's a 50% chance of happening, right?
It was. And to recap two events. At 7 a.m., RCB put out a tweet saying, "Hey, we're going to have this thing. We're going to have a parade. The players are going to come at the airport. Might or might not be a reception, but there was going to be an open-top bus parade between the Vidhan Sabha, which is the legislative building, to Chinnaswamy, which is a mile away from that building. And that's cool. A mile is not a problem. And they said, we'll let you know of the details later. And because you understood 7 a.m. is too early, but the word has been spread that it's going to happen today. And one of the players in the interview, actually, I'll just say, Virat Kohli, in the interviews on the night of winning, was already speaking that, it will sink in when we celebrate it with Bangalore tomorrow. And the reason that's important is because, in a way, it had to happen the next day because of the delay in the finish of the IPL because of the India-Pakistan conflict. There was a WTC that's coming up. There were Indian players who had to go for the India-England Test series. And other players had to leave for their other commitments. So they didn't have till the weekend to organize it.
Yep.
So it was pretty obvious that if anything were to happen, it would have to happen the next day. The first word went out in the morning, post which the city police were pretty straight in saying it's not going to happen. We don't have the logistical support. We don't have the safety measures in place, and we haven't planned for this. This thing needs planning. Yeah. So a bus parade is out of question. Ideally, that should have been, and by this time, word has gone on to the Karnataka government, to KSCA, and to RCB that the Bangalore police are not up for it. Ideally, that should have been a sign that, guys, okay, this can't happen. Except, like you said, what happened was there were multiple parties who pressured the Bangalore police and said, no, we are doing it. You figure out how you want to handle it. What we can do is fine. We won't do an open-top bus parade and music. But what we'll definitely are doing are we are going to have a reception at the airport. The players are going to land. They didn't land at the Bangalore International Airport. They landed at the Hal Airport, if I'm not wrong. There'll be reception with the state government and the city governments there. Then they will be taken to the legislative building, which is the Vidhan Sabha. And then there's a massive reception that's going to happen because by now the political dispensation also want to bathe in the sunlight. They're exactly. Hey, yeah. It's the first time RCB have won. We want to be part of the party. And one of the cops who spoke to Indian Express, I kind of linked it in the article, he was lamenting that, boss, one event is too much to happen on a whim. You now have us monitoring 4 events. Once the player landing, there is a reception at the airport, then the Vidhan Sabha reception, the parade from the Vidhan Sabha to the Chinnaswamy, they will go in some way in a bus or whatever. And from the Chinnaswamy, at Chinnaswamy, there is an event. So that's 4 events. And ideally, there should have been at least someone within this entire circle saying, boss, we need to break the circuit. This is not happening. At some point, it's going to fall apart. Except everyone piled on more things. Even the ceremony at the legislative building was not supposed to happen like it did. It was supposed to be, okay, the players meet the chief minister and the assistant chief minister. They get garlanded, then they get into the bus and they leave. But they realized that, hey, if they're here and it's a massive building, Vidhan Sabha, with an incredible view from the street, they said, hey, can we, like people do after winning the Bundesliga or in Argentina after winning the league, winning a big tournament, you make them all stand there and people will come in. And by noon, which is where, by that time, people have started going to Chinnaswamy and Vidhan Sabha because they are like, okay, something is happening, we'll just be there. There was still time for them to say, okay, let's kind of fix. And instead of doing that, they're like, okay, let's have a grand gala party. And that's usually that created the perfect storm.
How many people do we think were on the street and around by this stage in Bangalore? Like, is there an estimate on how many people were just out and trying to celebrate this?
Yes. By noon, we are talking around or north of 50,000 people. Yep. And the previous night was a lot more, like that was Bangalore coming out to party. But by noon, which is the key day, 4th of June, there are 50,000. And this is still hours before they have just landed at the airport. They are going to be received there. They're going to come to the legislative building. There are already people, who are coming in front of the Vidhan Sabha because there is no communication to them. They don't know what's happening. They don't know the timings. There has not been a clear kind of schedule given to them that, okay, this is what happens then, this is what happened here, this is what happens here. And when you tell a city of 14 million people, 14 million thirsty, hungry people, that everything is going to happen in a 1 mile block, everyone's going to come there. You haven't spread this out. Uh, so everyone kind of flocked there, which is why the conversation with Tarutru was so helpful to me to piece together everything, because he around 1ish 2ish he got off at a metro station and he found a bunch of people moving, and he noticed there were no police people there at that point. There was no near the stadium, and around that stadium there was no police, there was no medical kiosks, there was no water kiosks, there were no barricades, and there was nobody with a megaphone giving directions. And as he went towards the Vidhan Sabha, he realizes that this is, we are talking 50,000 to 1 lakh people, well before the party is going to start. But they are, because it's not 50,000 to 1 lakh, it's not that bad in that space. So it's still a celebratory mood. But the reason it's important is, well before it went wrong, there were still signs that, guys, we're going to have a very strong crowd. What are the ways we are controlling it? 4 divisions of the police were activated, and they had to kind of chase where the players and the politicians were moving, because they are the most important. I mean, there is a tangent we can take about how sad that is, but it's essentially they were chasing, they were shadowing the playing staff and the political dispensation. So first at the airport, then they all came to the legislation building. So half the city's police and the other forces were all chasing them because they had to ensure the maximum security for that. What ended up happening was there was just not enough people to direct the crowd between the Chinnaswamy and the legislative building. Even small direction there, barricades, would have ensured at least some form of, okay, you guys to the left, you guys to the right, we'll figure out what to do. Even that didn't happen.
What happens at the stadium? So they're going to have an event, which again is very normal in football and American sports, and we see it around the world. We've seen it in cricket many times before. They're going to have an event where people are going to turn up and they're going to hold the trophy and everything. But if they haven't planned any of this other stuff, and they now have more than 50,000 people on the streets, I'm assuming 50,000 is about the capacity of that ground anyway, and that's all sitting around in the stadium. This is going to be a little bit more haphazard because not everyone has ticket numbers, so it's already going to be a little bit more chaotic to begin with. So what happens then?
Okay, before we get to the stadium, there are a bunch of things that happen that are kind of key pieces of the puzzle.
Please.
So the Bangalore police announcement that the parade was not up was around noon. And by that time, people have started coming, people have started milling around, and it's still a 50,000 people party atmosphere, which is already more than the Chinnaswamy capacity. Chinnaswamy maxes out as around 30 to 35,000. And we are already getting signs of, okay, a lot of people are gathering. What RCB does is double down on that and publishes a tweet saying at around 2:35 or 3 p.m., saying we are going to have a Victory Day parade and free Victory Day parade passes in bold white font. And in fine print is written limited entry only. Now, free Victory Day parade is essentially what's going to happen inside the stadium. But by this time, you have essentially told the crowd that something's going to happen. And you have doubled down on the fact that we don't care what the police are saying. We are going to do something. And there is no word from the Karnataka government either, or the Bangalore police. So by this time, by 3 p.m., the crowd is not 50,000 anymore. The crowd is 300,000. And in a narrow road between the Chinnaswamy and the Vidhan Sabha, there's a bunch of people in front of the Vidhan Sabha, which is the first pictures of Virat Kohli raising the trophy and pointing to the people. That looked great on TV. But what was happening was that could have been anywhere around 25, 30, 50, 40,000 people. Everyone else was between that stretch and Chinnaswamy. Without police, everyone's packed in. Chinnaswamy gates are locked. And fans there don't know whether we'll get to enter. or whether it's ticketed. And there are also no police around the Chinnaswamy to tell them. The person I spoke to, Tarutro, who went, he spoke to two police people because he got spooked. He's like, there is no way this is okay. He's a Bangalore boy and he spent all his life here, and he knows. He was telling me that I know for a fact Bangalore does not have the capacity to organize something like this. So I got spooked. I left. On his way out, he spoke to two cops. One of them said 100% happening. The other guy said not happening. It will get cancelled at some point. So there was not enough information even within the police ecosystem. Now he leaves. This must be around 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. And by this time, there is a massive crowd. Like I said, north of 200,000 people have turned up. And they're all crunched in. And the Chinnaswamy, the road is, you won't call it narrow, but the leadway to the gates of Chinnaswamy is very narrow. You have to kind of enter a narrow bylane to enter the Chinnaswamy gates.
Yeah.
And people are trying to push through it because they are like, the real thing will happen there. Obviously, we know the parade is not going to happen, but the players will come there. We want to see the players. And by this time, there has been agitation, and this is a massive crowd literally crushed together for hours. And by this time, they haven't had water. It's sunny, and they're trying to break through doors and gates of the Chinnaswamy. And RCB have doubled down saying free Victory Day parade. And that kind of just lit the dust paper.
Brian Lara used pot plants to work on his placement. John Wright glued his glove to his bat. Sachin Tendulkar dug up practice pitches. Tatenda Taibu cut the top off his bat. Claire Taylor used a hockey grip. Steve Smith was from tennis. Dean Jones would call phantom runs. And Victor Trumper turned the nets into a war zone to survive. The best batters in the world do whatever they have to make runs. We have told their stories in our new book, The Art of Batting.
Where is the main issue where the crush starts to become a problem? Is it getting in the gates? Is it already in the stadium? Or where does the physical problem start to happen?
Oh no, Chinnaswamy gates haven't opened yet because the players are still at
So
the
they're still shut.
line.
So people are
Yeah.
all they're trying to do is line up at the gates at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is 10x the capacity of the stadium who are there.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be a physics expert to know that that's not on, especially in a country of narrowish lanes and bylanes as India. So there is one gate at Chinnaswamy where somebody from the inside just tries to open because there are people within who are trying to set up for the evening's party inside Chinnaswamy Stadium. So somebody just tries to open and they feel a massive crush towards them. This is, I think, gate 3, where they feel a massive crush towards them. And they close the gate because they're like, hey, this is not open yet. We are like, the players are still there. The players haven't arrived yet. We are well short of, we're nowhere close to the actual event.
Yep.
And that's where things start going wrong because now people are pushing each other. People are getting on top of each other. It's an agitated crowd. It's a packed in crowd. And they have no information on when something starts. If something starts, how do they get to see their idols? And even now, there is no one with a megaphone even directing this irate crowd. An irate crowd, I can speak as an Indian, having been part of Indian crowds. If you give them direction, if you tell them, okay, something will happen, not happen, but can you please step to the side? Then there'll be some form of organization. And that didn't happen. And I'm very cautious of blaming the cops here because they all had to rush to the Legislative Assembly because the political dispensation wanted to lift the IPL trophy.
Yeah, I've been to Chinnaswamy before.
It's beginning to go wrong there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Chinnaswamy before. Like, they're pretty full on about how they allow people into the ground. Like, of all the stadiums I've ever been in my life, it's probably one of the higher ones on that. So when it's organized correctly, it is people. As you said, it's really weird. They don't always seem to open all the gates up, and there's always extra long queues than you need, and everything's a little bit slow. But it's usually pretty well organized from a perspective of everyone knows where the queue is. There's people there. There's police making sure that people aren't coming in and annoying people and all that sort of stuff. So it can be run correctly, but I don't know how you can run something like this correctly when you already have too many people in that area. You've got it. It's kind of it's almost like on a block, isn't it? That ground, and it's got like,
Yeah.
is there tennis courts on one side? Is there a park on the other side? Like it's, it's not exactly. It's not like somewhere like. I'm trying to think of a good one. Maybe like the MCG or Pune, where you have like big open space around it, where you could actually fit an extra 100,000 or 200,000 people around it. This is actually quite a small little block that the ground is on. It's more like an English football ground than a major cricket stadium in that way.
Yeah. And another thing that happened was that the park next to it is called Cubbon Park. Now, Cubbon Park has two things. One, it is a massive park, but it is gated, and the gates were closed. And then Cubbon Park also has its own metro station, which is the rapid transit train station within. The metro station's shut. They're like, we are having too much of a footfall. We can't control the crowd. They shut their shutters. So this crowd that is packed in now has no outlet.
Yeah.
And like you said, Chinnaswamy is in a block. There's nowhere to go. Once you're in that lane, what's also happened, it's in a weekday afternoon. It's on a Wednesday afternoon, right? There is traffic piling up just outside. They are taking diversion, sure, because they have realized there's a massive crowd inside, but there's traffic. So it's not like the crowd can just take a U-turn and just go through that, because those are busy roads. Chinnaswamy, one of the good things about Chinnaswamy is in the center of the city. It's very accessible. And on that day, it was a problem with Chinnaswamy. Not Chinnaswamy's problem, obviously, but one of the cons was that because it was in the center of the city, this was peak of the afternoon. There's a traffic that's going here and there. And Bangalore is very, very traffic dense. So the crowd couldn't take a U-turn and go. So they are packed in no direction. And I think at 3:30, the players started to leave from the Vidhan Sabha, by which time the crowd crush situation and the stampede situation was already on. By which time there was already people fainting. And it was the fans who were there who were organizing the help because the stretchers hadn't come. To your point about how do you organize this, one of the conversations, side things I had with Mr. Bhaskar Rao, who's an ex-IPS of the city, is that sometimes in India where there's a lot of, we really like our heroes. A very famous actor from Puneet Rajkumar passed away. He was Bangalore's like soul, so to speak. And he passed away quite young. Next day, there was a mourning where people came and flocked to the streets. And I think Mr. Bhaskar Rao was the police commissioner of Bangalore during that point. So I asked him, how do you handle it? He's like, the first thing you do is you organize a Zoom call or you get a table. And like you get every one of the stakeholders sitting. Nothing's going to happen until they sign off. All roads are barricaded. If you feel something's going wrong, barricade the road, stop people from coming until there is a tentative green light. Maybe the plan cannot be always precise, but until there is a tentative plan in place, nothing is going to happen. No one's going to allow in within the barricades. And he was absolutely like amazed that no one thought of, okay, there have been certain announcements made by the franchise. Can we at least cordon off the streets so that crowds don't pack in? And even that didn't happen. So he was saying that as armed forces, you don't get to say, no, can't do it. You can say it's not right and we shouldn't do it. You have to be powerful and strong about it. And you have to kind of crack the whip if need be. But if you see a situation unfolding, you can't really say, not happening. So you have to spring into action, show some leadership, get things organized. And when you combine the population that was in the kind of police force that were already there and lack of resources and the lack of planning and everyone wanting their moment in the sun, everyone powerful wanting their moment in the sun, it created a situation where even as you're seeing videos of fans being stuck in, I was sitting at home, and if you had asked me, Sarthak, what's your solution to this? As in, how do you get these people out? There was no answer. Because even to have ambulances and stretchers, it took a long time to come. So that when the first casualty happened, when the second casualty happened, to get them out, to get them to the Boring hospital, it took a long, long time. It didn't happen immediately.
Do the first deaths happen before the gates are open then?
Yes. The first kind of injury happens well before. I think the first death happens as gate 20 opens, and by now nobody really cares about the fact that this is a ticketed event. People just run in, and I have a story to share with you about that. People just run in, and they go through the gates, and they absolutely barge inside. And I think that's where the first deaths start to happen. I think there was some very, very young female. I think she was 18, 19. She kind of falls. There is a lane that you have to enter the Chinnaswamy gate. And those lanes are tiled lanes, and one of the tile breaks and she kind of falls down. There was another death like that. So that happens when the gates start to open. But there were injuries and people fainting. That kind of stuff was being reported from well before.
And so what? So once that happens, it just continues in other places then as well? I'm assuming.
Yeah, it just continues to other gates as well. And by now there is also knowledge within the police ecosystem that something very problematic is happening here. So Can you send some resources here? So I think they activate some other divisions of Karnataka police, and they try to come in. They try to come in with some stretchers, with some ambulances. But by this time, the police is entering a packed crowd. And that's, obviously so different from the police being there ready and these medical facilities being ready for a crowd that's coming in. And anytime they spot a flashpoint, they're able to pull people out. The medical staff are entering way, way late, and they're entering into an already packed crowd.
Yeah.
So by 4 p.m., 5 p.m., we are getting numbers of 2, 3, 4 deaths already.
And so the event goes on, right? Like that doesn't stop the event from happening. You say in the piece that the players didn't know, but people knew. Like I'm not saying the players did, but people within the organizational structure and within the government must have known that this was already happening.
Organization structure definitely did, because at 6 p.m., by which time the death toll had mounted to more than 7, RCB posted a tweet with a Vidhan Sada picture saying, "This is our fan base," something on those lines. And they got lambasted for it, because the idea is, if you're on Twitter, you know what's happening.
Yeah.
How are you using this picture to show off your fan base? And there are journalists that I have massive respect for who were inside and who were like, listen, the true gravity of what's happening wasn't clear inside. You really had to stretch and to figure out that, okay, people have died, this and that. So it's very likely that the people within the organization knew, people within, obviously, the event management company knew, people within Karnataka state government knew. And Arun Dhumal, who's the IPL chairman, he apparently called up RCB. It was planned to be a 2-hour event. It was cut short to, I think, 20 minutes.
Yep.
And now Chinnaswamy is packed. The other dynamic is you can't announce to a packed crowd that something's gone wrong, because there'll be panic. So what they did was that they cut short the event until the event was happening and until the stadiums were playing all their songs and dances. There is a high chance that the players did not know, because, as you know, and you've been in the industry long enough to know this, it very little gets through to the players from outside.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time until they're on their phones, and they maybe weren't. So there is a chance that they didn't, but the organization definitely did. And it's very unfortunate that they thought that, okay, now that we're here, we have to do something. Instead of having a very muted one, they still played We Are the Champions. They still got people to do speeches. They still got the assistant chief minister to lift the IPL trophy along with Rajat Patidar and Virat Kohli. And that was pretty, how do I say this? What's the right word? That was tone deaf.
Were there more issues when people had to leave, or by that stage has the energy sort of gone out of it a little bit?
By that stage it has. And by that stage, two things are happening. People have begun to leave, and it has been, once you see people dying in front of you, obviously it's not going to be the same. But there are a lot of people who are still coming in thinking that, okay, there's something happening at the Chinnaswamy. And because all the information is on Twitter timelines, and maybe not everyone's Twitter savvy, there's still no information from the police. The police haven't directed, and they still haven't cordoned off the road, even if there is, say, information on news channels. as a city, law organization, you have to cordon off the road saying you are not entering. There is enough crowd inside. No one else is allowed. You have a police setup there. That wasn't there still. So yes, the crowd was beginning to disperse and leave, but there were still enough people who were trying to come in. And I wouldn't say that complicated the situation anymore, because by this time the police had come in, by this time the medical infrastructure was there. And even if people were packing in, they were being told that, okay, Chinnaswamy is packed. That is the end of the event. You're not going to see the guys. But yeah, by this time it's already gone south.
You talk in the piece about how this is something that has happened quite a bit in India in other situations. And I think you said in the piece you did a Google search, and like so many of those things have come up, and I've seen them before. I remember when Phil Hughes died, everyone in the cricket world sort of got very emotional, and I got a lot of emails and a lot of feedback from Indians going, one guy's died. That's just a normal thing that happens. Death is a different thing in a country of that size, with all the issues that India has had all the way through. And so some of those other moments where people have been crushed in riots and, gone to religious events where it's gone wrong and everything else, have kind of not got swept under the rug, but kind of been compartmentalized. It feels like this one's a lot harder to do because it's cricket related, and because it was so public. It wasn't something that just one area of the country knew about. It's something that the whole country knew about. Is this the time when these things start to change and people start to understand that you can't keep putting people into danger?
No. The answer to your last question, unfortunately, is no. There was attention immediately. And that's because, like you rightly said, it was such a public thing, and it was on all your news channels, all your social media channels, everywhere. But crowd management in India, the reason I wanted to end the piece by talking about crowd management in India is it's an ongoing issue. I'll share two stories. The 1996 World Cup, India's group game against Sri Lanka is in Delhi. And 1996 World Cup is big. All the hoardings are cricket related. And Kotla is, well, suboptimal now. It was straight up poor then. So a lot of people have gone there. And they have gone to the ground. India have started batting. And they have realized they can't get in because the police are like, hey, we've overpacked. And the people outside are like, we have legitimate tickets. What the hell do you mean you overpacked? Yeah. And the people have just said, we've let people in, I guess. And now there is no space. In fact, like back then, Kotla used to have concrete seating. So we have kind of pushed a lot of people in. Amongst those thousands and thousands of people who were left outside with legitimate tickets were 4 people. One of them was my father and 3 of his closest friends who are essentially my uncles. Then in 2011, this is not a cricket story, Metallica came to India. And it was the first time in India. And they wanted to do 2 shows, one in Gurgaon, which is adjacent to Delhi, and one in Bangalore. The Gurgaon show was first in a park which can hold 5,000 people. On a concert day, if you're packing people in, maybe 6,000. And it was an afternoon show. People have come in. Obviously, if you now sell tickets for Metallica, people are going to come in. And they have come in, except it's not 5,000. Very soon, word spreads that the organizers had kind of sold 10,000 tickets for that event. And there was no way the park was going to hold 10,000. So now people have packed in. Metallica are in a hotel about a mile away. And they have got wind of the fact that there can be a security issue. Because the kind of logistics and security there was to handle 4,000, 5,000 people, not 10, 12,000 people.
Yeah.
And so they had to cancel the gig. It didn't turn out well, and the people kind of went to the stage and kind of, destroyed their equipment. But that's it. The idea was you don't sell 10,000 tickets for an event that should sell 5,000. And you're very right that in a country with crowds and population density everywhere, it's very easy to say from afar that there should be crowd management. And of course, there should be. But it's a problem that's not. I mean, I was just noting down all the arrests that has happened. There have been a bunch of arrests and suspensions, including that of the police commissioner who said there should not be a victory parade. He got fired first. And so there has been no bill, no conversations where we have challenged that. How could you let it happen? Where we have challenged that, okay, it's happened. We are going to mourn the dead. How do you ensure that next time it happens, there isn't even one casualty? One casualty is too many. How do you ensure that doesn't happen? So there is no movement. And in Jan and Feb, there is this massive, massive religious event that happens in India every 12 years. That happened and a bunch of people passed away. I don't want to let the hounds on you and discuss India and deaths because you will be national news by tomorrow. But point being, I don't foresee much change because there's just been too many incidences where people have been injured, people have died en masse. Just having it running on news channels with, coked up anchors, that's going to keep it in our attention for 3 days. The fourth day, we have another thing to worry about.
So, I mean, I know it's not exactly the same, but the Hillsborough thing in football is a quite interesting one because the people who are blamed for that end up being the fans, right? And so because the fans are being blamed, there is this justice that people try and find. It feels like the people who are going to be blamed for this are not going to be the fans. It's going to be, as you said, the police officer who's already lost his job and, other people from within, cricket and logistics and government and all these sorts of people are going to be blamed. But the Hillsborough thing stands alone because it's something that doesn't happen very often in England. So it's still a very touchy thing. The issue with India is, as you said, there is going to be another event. Eventually, one of these events, though, is going to be the one that starts to change the way that these practices are looked at, right? Like there has to be a finally a way of doing that. And even if it just helps cricket, right? Like from now on, there is, as I was saying before, and I've seen this in multiple countries, but I can tell you, I talked to some people who work for the ICC for recently about this. And they had multiple games where they said, this is not safe. This game should not be going ahead. We don't have what we need here. And no one listened. So my question is for cricket specifically, is this a moment for cricket to be like, we understand this? Because Indian fans aren't particularly well looked after by their stadiums to begin with. Like, I've been to lots of stadiums around the world. Indian stadiums don't look after their fans. Is this a moment where cricket, if not India, can understand that there is something that needs to be done in the future? Or is it exactly the same? And it's just like, it was news for 3 or 4 days and it won't be news in a year's time when you need to worry about it again.
It won't. I will take 2-3 tangents. One about the people who will be blamed. I have it here. The initial arrests, out of the initial arrests, not the suspensions, it says the people who were suspended were B. Dayananda, who was a commissioner of police, the additional commissioner of police, West, Central, and a couple of other cops from Cubbon Park. They were suspended and there have been substitutes. The political secretary of the chief minister, he has been suspended. There are people from RCB and DNA who are the event management company. The marketing head for RCB was arrested, and there are people from within DNA. 3 people from within the entertainment event management company were arrested. They're all back on bail. They're all out. 2 people from the Karnataka State Cricket Association have resigned, taking moral responsibility, but for the longest time they wanted to make it sound like they had nothing to do with it. So yes, the chief minister announced a magisterial probe and a CID probe. But in that press conference, all he kind of said was that we are not like other governments and we are not going to play a blame game. Except there was not one question as to, on a rush schedule, why did you have to get yourself in the middle of this? You haven't won Jack. You haven't contributed Jack to Karnataka cricket. So how are you stealing the limelight? And the reason they did it was not out of cynicism, but of a very instinctive response of people in power to when something good happens. They want to be part of the event. They want to be part of the magazine shot. as you see with the latest ICC videos that have been released today from the World Test Championship final, right?
And then deleted, I believe, as well. But yes.
And then deleted, yeah, thankfully. Let's play a game. Let's imagine you make the world's biggest cricket stadium. You hold 90,000, 100,000 people. And you plan to host the best games in your country there. You hold a World Cup final, you hold Australia, England. How many exits will you make for 100,000 people? In the Ahmedabad Stadium, there is one exit. 100,000 people, one exit. My theory is until they make it a stadium where there are multiple exits. Now, I haven't been to the stadium, so I don't know the feasibility of making exits. But if you've made a stadium which houses 100,000 people, you have to have exits. It rained. So one of the first biggest matches was the 2023 IPL final where it rained. And it was chaos because it rained on the first day. The final was carried over to the next day. It was chaos getting out that evening. So when you pack in, and if something goes wrong in a big match, the matches India have played there for, barring the World Cup final, everything's gone well. And I think it helped that the final was against Australia because we've been used to it hurt like nothing else.
Yeah.
But losing to Australia wasn't as new. Had we lost to a Pakistan, it wouldn't have been the same. And when you pack your fans in and you leave them one exit, a chaos is not a question of if anymore, it's a question of when, right? So nothing will change. I don't think. I think it's
nothing at all.
Nothing at all, because the difference with Hillsborough is, like you rightly said, the fans were blamed and the fans were like, how dare you? This is Yorkshire police who have done this to us. We have evidence and we'll fight the case for however long, 30 years, right? Thankfully, barring the chief minister's statement that we were expecting 35,000 people and the crowd is out of control, no one's pointed a finger at the fans. But to give you a sign, the assistant chief minister has today published a photo riding a bike in the Vidhan Sabha and saying the people are my strength. I don't need horsepower, I need people power. And that's a great sign of what kind of waters they're in. They're swimming, they're having their pina coladas, they're cool.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure, Jared.